What if I told you a single blurred figure in the background might have just reignited one of the biggest what-if stories in C-drama fandom? A hoodie, a cap, and one tiny detail fans swear you can't unsee. And suddenly the internet is asking the same question again. Did Wu Lei quietly show up for Zhao Lusi, away from the cameras and the headlines? Stay with me, because the clue is subtle. But the reactions are massive. It began without noise or intention. A routine behind-the-scenes image from Zhao Lusi's filming set appeared online, much like dozens of others that circulate every week. At first glance, nothing seemed unusual. The lighting was ordinary, the framing unremarkable, and the focus, naturally, was on Zhao Lusi herself. Yet as often happens in the digital age, stillness invited scrutiny. In the background, partially obscured by equipment and shadows, stood a figure that did not belong to the center of the frame. It was indistinct, almost forgettable. But for some viewers, that indistinct presence became the entire story. The image did not shout. It whispered. And whispers, when repeated enough times, begin to echo. What transformed this moment from ordinary to compelling was not what the image showed, but what it suggested. The idea that something unplanned, perhaps even unintended, had slipped into view. A fragment of reality not polished for public consumption. In an industry where appearances are carefully managed, the smallest unscripted detail can feel unusually powerful. This was not about certainty. It was about possibility, and once that possibility was noticed, it could not be unseen. The moment sparked curiosity not because it proved anything, but because it felt human, quiet, fleeting, and unresolved. What sets this particular hidden clue apart is not its clarity, but its ambiguity. The image offers no confirmation, no decisive evidence, and no direct narrative. Yet paradoxically, that lack of definition is exactly what gives it weight. It invites interpretation rather than delivering conclusions. Fans did not respond impulsively. Instead, they examined patterns. Clothing similarities, posture, timing, and location were discussed not as facts, but as points of reference. Each element on its own meant very little. Together they formed a mosaic that felt, at least emotionally, coherent. The discussion was less about identification and more about resonance. In many online rumors, exaggeration comes quickly. Here, the tone was noticeably different. There was caution alongside curiosity. Many fans framed their observations carefully, using conditional language rather than certainty. This restraint made the conversation feel more grounded and therefore more believable. Another reason the clue resonated is because it aligned with a broader narrative fans already recognized. Wu Lei and Zhao Lusi share a history of on-screen partnership that left a lasting impression. When audiences already perceive a connection, even a subtle suggestion can feel meaningful. Ultimately, the clue felt different because it respected uncertainty. It did not force a story. It allowed one to emerge organically, and in doing so, it encouraged viewers to think rather than simply react. Among the many interpretations, one perspective stood out for its quiet maturity, the idea that this was not about secrecy, but support. Rather than framing the moment as a dramatic or romantic revelation, some fans considered a simpler explanation, one rooted in empathy rather than speculation. Filming schedules are demanding. Long hours, emotional intensity, and physical exhaustion are common realities on set. In such an environment, the presence of a familiar and trusted person, if it occurred, would not necessarily be a headline-worthy event. It could simply be an act of encouragement. This theory reframes the narrative entirely. Instead of asking, "What does this mean for their relationship?" it asks, "What does it say about human connection?" Support does not always announce itself. Often, it exists quietly, without documentation or acknowledgement. For many viewers, this interpretation felt more believable because it did not rely on drama. It relied on understanding. It allowed room for friendship, respect, and professional solidarity, values that resonate across cultures and age groups. In this light, the story becomes less about uncovering a secret and more about recognizing kindness. Whether the theory is accurate or not, it offers a perspective that feels grounded and emotionally reassuring. And sometimes, that is enough to make a story worth telling. As the discussion evolved, a new phenomenon emerged. Fans began organizing information rather than amplifying noise. What some referred to as a clue map was not an attempt to declare truth, but to visualize context. Timelines were created, images compared, and publicly available details placed side by side. This approach marked a shift in how audiences engage with celebrity narratives. Instead of passive consumption, viewers became curators. They did not rush to conclusions. They explored connections. The process itself became a shared activity, fostering community rather than division. Importantly, many of these efforts included disclaimers. Fans repeatedly acknowledged uncertainty, reminding one another that correlation does not equal confirmation. This collective self-awareness added credibility to the discussion and prevented it from becoming hostile or invasive. What the clue map truly represents is not investigation, but participation. It reflects a desire to understand stories in a more thoughtful way, rather than accepting headlines at face value. For some, it is less about Lei or Zhao Lusi specifically, and more about the satisfaction of collaborative interpretation. In an era dominated by rapid judgment, this slower, more reflective engagement stands out. It shows that audiences are capable of curiosity without entitlement and speculation without aggression. To fully understand why stories like this remain unresolved, it is important to consider the environment in which public figures operate. In many entertainment industries, particularly in East Asia, privacy is not merely personal, it is professional. Public scrutiny can be relentless. Even neutral interactions can be misinterpreted, amplified, or used to shape narratives beyond an individual's control. As a result, discretion often becomes a form of self-protection rather than secrecy. From this perspective, silence is not an admission, nor is it denial. It is a boundary. And boundaries are increasingly respected by international audiences who understand the pressures of visibility in the digital age. For viewers across different cultures, this restraint can feel refreshing. It contrasts with the oversharing common on social media and suggests a more balanced relationship between public and private life. The absence of confirmation allows space for dignity and normalcy. Whether or not there is anything to confirm becomes secondary. What matters is the recognition that not every meaningful moment needs to be shared or explained. Sometimes, keeping things quiet is not about hiding. It is about preserving something that does not belong to the public. As with most stories rooted in ambiguity, reactions naturally diverged. On one side were those who felt a sense of optimism. They saw familiarity in the details, comfort in the patterns, and warmth in the possibility of connection. For them, the story aligned with what they hoped might be true. On the other side were viewers who urged restraint. They questioned the reliability of visual assumptions and reminded others that appearances can mislead. Their skepticism was not dismissive, but cautious, grounded in the belief that respect matters more than speculation. What is notable is that neither side dominated the conversation. Instead, the dialogue remained relatively balanced. This balance created a rare environment where differing perspectives could coexist without hostility. Such a split reaction reflects a healthy audience dynamic. It shows that viewers are not merely chasing confirmation, but engaging thoughtfully with uncertainty. They are willing to hold multiple possibilities at once. In this way, the reaction itself becomes part of the story. It demonstrates how modern audiences negotiate belief, hope, and responsibility, especially when the line between public interest and personal space is so easily crossed. Now I want to hear from you. Do you think the hidden clue is meaningful, or just a classic case of the internet reading too much into a photo? If you enjoyed this style of respectful, story-driven celebrity coverage, subscribe to CNNEWS, give this video a like and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next update. Thank you for watching, and as always, take care, stay kind, and I'll see you in the next CNNEWS video.